While Josh Holliday seems to play the long game, the Phil Steele magazine rankings don't like much of anything seemingly within our game in Stillwater, Oklahoma, but that's okay. Two quarterbacks are on the way to lessen the blow, one of the homegrown variety, and one is an Elite 11 early riser.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I'm going to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms and visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially right now when new FanDuel customers can get $200 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet is a winner. Head over to FanDuel.com to get squared away today. Meanwhile, we're going to talk about the conversational piece of the quarterbacks that are coming into Stillwater, Oklahoma. Naturally, when you lose Garret Rangel and you lose Maealuiaki Smith, both have been pretty good contributors over the last few years as Cowboy quarterbacks. You have to have something in the background to help lessen the load. Now, we did bring in Banks Bowen, a very adequate quarterback who likely would have the possibility of starting at Tulsa this year. So it's a pretty big deal for him to leave Tulsa, to come to Oklahoma State, to essentially be QB3. But athletically speaking, he fits right into the mold, as does, to some degree, Stillwater High School's own Mason Schubert. Mason Schubert is coming over 6'3", 190 pounds. Now, he comes over from Morrison to Stillwater, Oklahoma. Last year, he leads them on a pretty darn good season, has a couple hundred yards rushing. He also threw for 1,887 yards. Now, in the broad scheme of things, that is not all that great whenever you're talking about some of the best quarterbacks in the country. But he's a homegrown talent who had some offers from some smaller schools that is now going to have the opportunity to kind of bolster up this roster entering 2025. Clearly, there's an emphasis on the quarterback position. Yeah, we have two really good ones. We brought in Banks Bowen, so you feel pretty cool about three. But in today's age of college football, you realistically needed four. This is why we went out and decided to convince Mason Schubert to come to Oklahoma State. Now, there's still some discrepancy on whether he's going to be a walk-on or not. Regardless, even if he's going to be a walk-on, I would assume that there's some NIL things built in here to help lessen the blow of what it would cost to go to school for an entire year. It'll be nice to see if he can progress, just like it'll be nice to see if Kase Evans ends up on campus. Kase Evans is, he's theoretically only a 3-star, and he doesn't have a ton of big offers, but he's an Elite 11 early riser who's already thrown for 8,695 yards in high school. He's thrown for 86 touchdowns. He's averaging almost 230 yards a game, and, the interceptions need to be cleaned up a bit, but nonetheless, this is an individual that I feel like you're going to see come on the scene a little bit more as time progresses, and I feel like his recruiting is going to tick up a couple notches as well. He is mobile enough, but he's not going to be running around like a Haas Haney or even to some degree like a Zane Flores. I think whenever you're looking at Kase Evans, this is an instance where we have a good connection for a young man. There's a good family-style atmosphere that he fits within. And typically, more often than not, we're not going to be bringing in a bunch of people that aren't going to be able to contribute right away. I think Mason Schubert does have some potential. He's a lefty, which obviously makes it a little bit different, but he's got a very, very quick release. So his arm angle looks a little funky whenever you're watching it live, but if you slow it down and replay it, it comes off of his hand really, really quickly. He kind of comes across the ball a little bit more on the down on the ball, so it's a little deceptive, but nonetheless, he's good at leading the receivers. He's good at getting outside of the pocket, extending plays, making some things happen. And Kase Evans is like a tried and true consummate professional. He's been featured as, one of the best players in the state of Texas at multiple events throughout the course of the 7-on-7 and this previous season. He's been named to the early Elite 11 risers. He was one of the top 5 candidates in the Elite 11 Austin camp. How that ends up shaking out, we don't know. The last Elite 11 guy that made it all the way to the final section of the Elite 11 was Garret Rangel. Zane Flores is comparable to Kase Evans here, and he was making a lot of noise early, making a lot of noise regionally, geographically, but as the national circuit kind of kicked up, he focused more on high school. Kase Evans might even do the same thing, but I wanted to read this little write-up that was done on Kase Evans before he heads into Oklahoma State. So this is from Mike Farrell Sports. 3-star quarterback Kase Evans is one to watch, 6'3", 190 pounds. He started 38 games as a high school quarterback, class of 2026. His previous season, the veteran posted 3 shutouts and finished with a 12-2 record after a deep run in the playoffs. A lot of success enjoyed by the Eagles last season was due to the chemistry exhibited between Evans and his receivers who had played football together since their Pop Warner days. Last season alone, Evans passed for 3,113 yards, 37 touchdowns, while only having 7 picks. So the picks he had the first couple years were not as big of an issue this previous season. 37-7 is a pretty phenomenal number, actually. He threw at least 1 touchdown pass in every game and played 6 weeks without throwing a single interception. Evans led an offense that scored 50 points or more in 7 games this previous season. Some of the measurements: 6'3", 195 pounds, a 475-pound squat, 21.7 miles per hour speed, 33-inch vertical, over 87 total varsity yards, 38 varsity starts. The film doesn't lie. Evans also earned Mr. Texas Football Player of the Week honors in Week 10, while completing 13 of 14 passes for 327 yards and accounted for 6 touchdowns, 5 passing, 1 rushing, and a 35-0 W over Rodgers. So you're seeing some of this. He's not quite the same level as the Oscar Rios or Luke Fahey's of the world, but we also got to take into consideration Oscar Rios is a West Coast kid whose dream growing up was to get a UCLA offer. He just recently got that UCLA offer, and then he took a UCLA visit. So the likelihood of landing an Oscar Rios probably taking a little bit more of a backseat. Luke Fahey may still be a possibility, but at the same point in time, you got to be able to fill the coffers with people you feel comfortable. And here's one of the reasons I feel comfortable, aside from the stats, aside from him being an early Elite 11, geographical riser, it's the fact that he's going to fit with the system that we plan on utilizing his strengths, right? I mean, we talked at an earlier episode. They're not bringing people in that they don't think can contribute within 2.5 years, right? The days of having a 3, 4, 5-year project are going to be pretty limited. Now, quarterback might be a position that gets a little bit more of a grace period because you're going to need a little bit more on the depth chart there, just in case of injuries. So perhaps that changes the equation a little bit. But by and large, I think that the idea behind Kase Evans and even Mason Schubert to some degree is we're bringing guys in that can contribute. So if something happens, these individuals can kind of step up and serve while the other quarterbacks are getting healthy. At the same point in time, I think Kase Evans is definitely good enough to have some potential of starting within the next few years, because we're not going to be able to hold on to all of the quarterbacks. The fact that we were able to hold on to everybody last year, pretty remarkable. The thought of them staying all of this season was probably unlikely, and the same will be said for the next season. When you have 4 quarterbacks, percentage-wise, one of them, maybe even 2 of them, are going to feel slighted, or they're going to feel like they're underutilized, or they're not developing well enough, or they're going to have better opportunities elsewhere. So the cyclical nature of all of this equals the quarterback position may be one of the few where you're willing to take a little bit more time for developmental purposes. And if it were to hold serve, you got Zane Flores here for 4 years still coming up. And then you have Haas Haney here for at least 3 years coming up. So youth at the quarterback position is not that big of an issue. But at the same point in time, if you don't run with the quarterback system this year, or God forbid you have an injury, this conversation gets pretty messy. So I like the fact that we brought in a local Stillwater High School kid, Mason Schubert, to kind of help solidify the depth on this quarterback roster. And Kase Evans is clearly somebody we've identified that could come in and be a contributor within 2.5 years. So if we have some transfers pop up, Kase Evans is an individual that should be able to slide in pretty seamlessly in the next couple of years. He has the talent. He has the size. He clearly has the speed at 21.7 miles per hour to do more than even his high school offense is asking him to do. I think this is a pretty big deal. When you lose two, you got to fill two. And one of those individuals that we brought in is going to help right away in the 2025 season. The other one is likely the quarterback of the future. Speaking of things in the future, Phil Steele's magazine is legendary. And oftentimes they write very glowingly about Oklahoma State, but not always. Always and forever, you can count on FanDuel. However, it is the NBA playoff action. You're seeing the Pacers and the Thunder put on pretty remarkable performances, and to make it interesting, every single night's going to be interesting. It's going to deliver highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and obviously can't miss moments. Whether it's in-game winning shots or breakout performances or hanging from the rim to make something wild happen, it is not a better time than right now for you to get in on the action. It's easy to stay locked in on the game before tip-off and even live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. You know that a $200 bonus in bets will add to the excitement of your first $5 winner. If you have a good read on who's about to heat up, why not lay some money down on the line? If you have a feeling that something crazy is about to happen, throw some skin in the game, have some fun with it. If you're new to FanDuel, it is the best time to sign up. You can head on over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it is a winner, you'll get $200 back in bonus bets. So go to FanDuel.com today. Get that $200 back in bonus bets when your first $5 hauler is a winner. Head on over to FanDuel. Make every moment matter more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Now we get to shift gears here to the Phil Steele magazine, which is pretty legendary. It typically, has a lot of great things to say. It recently had a lot of great things to say about Colin Oliver and Nick Martin and Ollie Gordon and Brendan Presley. So it's not often that we kind of get left in the dust, but it does happen occasionally, and it did happen this go around. Phil Steele put out his prediction for the 2025 season, including his preseason, the top 25. When I say he, I mean that entire magazine company. They have Baylor, number 1, entering the season, followed by Utah as number 2, Iowa State, number 3, Arizona State, number 4, K-State Wildcats, number 5, the Texas Tech Red Raiders, number 6, the TCU Horned Frogs, number 7, the BYU Cougs, number 8, the Cincinnati Bearcats, number 9, the KU Jayhawks, number 10, the Houston Cougars, number 11, the UCF Knights, followed by the Colorado Buffaloes, then Oklahoma State, and then Arizona and West Virginia. It sucks to be you, WVU, right? Being projected that far down. It's obviously not fun. So let's read what he said about Baylor, just out of curiosity. Baylor rated a plus 6.3 on the SMI, and Dave Aranda's second year, he won the Big 12 title, beat Ole Miss in a bowl game to finish with a school record, 12 wins, number 5 in the AP. All signs pointed down to Baylor in 2022, who went 6-3, but they did lose their last 4 games. In 2023, Baylor was 3-4, and then lost the last 5. Last year, they had an SMI of plus 6. After they allowed a Hail Mary TD to Colorado and lost, they were just 2-4, but won the last 6 games, including the bowl game. This year, 15 starters return. They get 5 Big 12 home games and the 4th best schedule. Well, maybe, but, we're still pretty salty about what happened in the Big 12 title game. All right, we get that. What I don't get is why Utah is being projected this high up. Again, I think Devin Dampier is pretty cool. I think they have some talent, obviously. I believe in Whittingham, but number 2 just seems a little crazy, especially when you have Oklahoma State at 14th. 3rd to last. Now, after a 3-9 season and 0-9 in conference play, I get it. But, the disrespect for Oklahoma State, it might be welcomed. Because, again, Mike Gundy typically has his biggest seasons in the years that we're not projected to do much. And Phil Steele's team, they do a lot of due diligence. They do a lot of digging. A couple of the things to talk about. Why they love Baylor so much is probably why they have Sawyer Robertson as the first team All Big 12 quarterback entering the season, followed by Avery Johnson, Sam Levitt, and Rocco Becht. I think that's pretty fair. I think you could make the argument that Sam Levitt and Sawyer Robertson should swap places, or Sam Levitt should be 1, Sawyer should be 2, Avery should be 3. I think there's a lot of things you can maneuver around in there. But more importantly, as it pertains to Oklahoma State, they don't love us. Obviously, they have us going 14th out of 16 teams. And then their preseason top Big 12, they don't have much in the way of us in representation. They do have Akron linebacker transfer Brian McCoy making the 4th team All Big 12 list. They have returning cornerback Cam Smith making the 4th team All Big 12. And then they have our long snapper, Shea Frybaum, also making it as a 4th teamer. And it's hard to argue, right? But Gabe Panikowski, the kicker, won basically what is the Heisman for the lower levels when it comes to special team stuff. So having Shea Frybaum in there, pretty cool. I think he's a very good long snapper. But not having the kicker in there after winning all the awards that he did before he came to Oklahoma State, okay, maybe a little bit of an egregious crime. Lloyd played a lot at Nebraska as a tried and true track and field speedster. Maybe he could have cracked this list. Rodney Fields showed flashes this previous season, but okay, maybe not enough to be on this list. Justin Kirkland may have been on this list if he would not have transferred. I think at the end of the day, we're just going to have to do a lot of proving it. And sometimes that's more difficult, especially whenever you're coming off this lackluster style of season. But when the chips are down and the stacked, or whatever, it's stacked against us, you get what I'm saying. This is where Mike Gundy shines. It's equal parts welcoming and frustrating, because when you do have a bunch of returning starters, and this is what I'll give a cautionary tale to Baylor, 15 returning starters doesn't mean as much in Oklahoma State country anymore. We have never returned 20 returning starters. I don't think we ever will do that again. And it amounted to not a whole lot. So it's fun when you're talking about some of these top 10 guys, right? Trip White coming over from Ole Miss could have possibly been on this list. Shamar Rigby played a very significant amount for Purdue as a wide receiver, could have made this list. J.K. Johnson, former 5-star level dude, could have made this. Jalen Davies did a lot for UCLA. So it's not like he was, coming in off the back burner. Having Cam Smith on here is pretty cool. If we can see some more evolutionary process with him, and maybe Jalen Davies and J.K. Johnson are going to be some of those veterans that have been at, Oregon, LSU, Ohio State, those style of stops, to kind of help guide and get to a new level of somebody like a Cam Smith. And Brian McCoy should be on this. I think that actually does make sense. But there's so many players that are potentially being left out. Bob Schick coming over from Virginia Tech. He's a veteran, a lot of playing time. Perhaps could have made this. Kyron Duhan, very sought after first team All-American coming over from UTEP, could have made this list. So I'm not saying that I wholeheartedly disagree with the concept of Oklahoma State being projected to go second to last, third to last in the entire conference, and only have a couple dudes make the 4th team All Big 12. But that's the beauty of the bipolar Big 12, is a lot of this could change, right? And we could be having a conversation about how Baylor's 15 returning starters didn't really amount to a whole heck of a lot. We could be having a conversation at the end of the year about somebody like an Io Showed My King or Caleb Hicks or a Haas Haney or a Zane Flores absolutely grabbing the conference by storm and making something magical happen. I didn't even see Jalen Daniels isn't on this list. And then when you look at the overall, I think it's a little confusing. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. The justification for Baylor, I get it. Justification for Iowa State, I get it. Arizona State for sure. Kansas State for sure. Tech, I'm buying in to the Lubbock hype. TCU at 7 probably does make some sense. BYU below them, it's a little sketchy. Cincinnati at number 9. What is this about? Let's read what Phil Steele said. The Bearcats were a playoff team in 2021. They lost to Tulane. In 2023, head coach Scott Scatterfield had just 9 returning starters and a very tough task. He picked them last in the Big 12 this previous season, and then they dropped the last 5 games to become one of my rare most improved teams. But dropped the last 5 to become. That's so confusing. This year they have 15 returning starters. Okay, so that's the justification. Cincinnati is high because of. I don't get it. Maybe you guys can make it make more sense to me. And again, I'm not saying we should be a top 5 preseason Big 12 team or even a top 10. I've been hovering around 10. Makes sense. This is still Mike Gundy. I've given as much grief to Mike Gundy as most of the next people out there. But I've also been able to find ways that he's improved his game, his status, and improved the outset of what we expect in Stillwater. We expect a reemergence. We expect a rebuild. We expect Oklahoma State to be back in contention. And it's kind of nice. We talked about hammering the over on the win totals and things of that nature. It's a season to make money. And Phil Steele obviously thinks this is a season for all of us to make some money as well. But Josh Holliday, come on, what are we doing? Oklahoma State Cowboy baseball didn't have the season we were supposed to have. It was Josh Holliday's statistically worst year thus far. And it just wasn't a good season. We wasted a bunch of talent, and now it's the end of an era for our pitching coach, Rob Walton, who is a legend and did prove this season, once again, with the developmental aspects of Harrison Bodendorf and Mario Pesca, that he's still got that developmental acumen in him. So we're going to have to replace him. Mississippi State pitching coach decided to stay at Mississippi State. How dare you stay at a perennial top 10 team, sir, that has facilities that are not quite but close to O'Brate? How dare you stay in Stark Vegas when you could have come to Oklahoma State and enjoyed all of O'Brate? So nonetheless, we do continue the pitching coach shirts. But the frustrating part is, and Kase O-State Daily dude was kind of talking about this yesterday. He heard, or it appears as though that we're likely going to wait till after the major league draft before we kind of fill the roster, at least from the pitching perspective. And I don't necessarily get that, right? Do I want to compare ourselves to OU? Absolutely not. But OU's already been pretty heavily involved in the transfer portal. They've already grabbed almost a handful of dudes. They've got a commitment from probably the best player in the state of Oklahoma, definitely the best pitcher in the state of Oklahoma, and Savion Sims. Now, thankfully, when you're projected that high, and we experience this all the time, those guys typically don't come to college, right? Because they're going to be drafted pretty high in the MLB draft. So hopefully, we don't have to lick our wounds and deal with that. But a lot of teams are already filling the roster. They're being pretty aggressive in the transfer portal and identifying what the talent needs to be. And seemingly, I hope it's not true, but it might be that Josh Holliday is waiting until after the major league draft before he decides to fill the roster. Well, that's problematic for a ton of reasons. But one of the reasons is, much like this previous season, yet we kind of got late in some of the pickups. Now, again, Mario Pesca, Harrison Bodendorf, Sean Youngerman, they all proved to be really good additions. But we need help outside of the mound, right? So you're hearing that some guy like Donovan LaSalle leaving. It's kind of surprising. Hearing that Drew Culbertson's likely staying, pretty surprising. And then we don't know where some of these other guys are going to end up playing. Jason Jones seemingly might end up moving to first base, which means we have openings here. Aiden Miola might medically get another season back. If so, that would be absolutely massive for him. But let me know down in the comment section for all you fine folks out here on YouTube. What do you think about the idea, or at least the possible prospect of waiting until after the draft to fill the roster? It's a gamble, to say the least, because if you have identified some dudes that could bolster the lineup and you wait till after the draft, well, maybe OU or Ole Miss or West Virginia or Baylor or Cincinnati, maybe they're not going to wait till the draft. Okay? Maybe some of these teams know who they're going to have drafted and they know who the replacements need to be. Or maybe they understand that even if they're not going to get drafted, there's a handful of guys that just are not ready to contribute at this level, whatever the case may be. There's exit meetings where you identify those things, and obviously those have happened because you've seen some transfers leave, but you haven't seen anybody come in. You haven't even really seen much communication about visits and things of that nature. And I know baseball, it's more precarious than most sports to kind of nail down what is happening in the transfer market and recruiting and who's taking visits, so on and so forth. So I understand that. But after the season that we had, I feel like Josh Holliday should be taking this opportunity to be more vocal, to be more upfront about some of the things that have transpired throughout the course of the season, and without getting all butthurt about it. And while also explaining that there's a direction and there's certain positions that we need help with, or we need help with more pitching or more hitting, or we need to get better at small ball, whatever the case is, give us a direction. Because if you're not going to bring in recruits before transfers before the draft, it just feels like the more time that we wait, we're kind of flying blind and putting ourselves in an even more ridiculous spot. We have to have a fix-it season. I mean, you got to fix this. And I'm confused by our tactics right now. It's a bold move, Cotton. Hopefully it pans out. Anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor. Hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike it if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast and people out there, appreciate everything you do. Do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. Later, taters.